Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, in the United States, left-wing Democrats backed by former presidential hopeful Bernie Sanders have suffered a setback overnight after voters in the midterm primary races favoured traditional candidates over their more liberal challengers. The Democratic establishment says sticking to the centre is the best way to win over Trump supporters. But as Kieran Moodley reports, others continue to call for a radical agenda, arguing that democratic socialism is the best way to take down President Trump in 2020.
You're probably familiar with this chant, the unofficial Labour Party theme tune to last year's general election. But this isn't the UK, this is America. And these are US socialists looking for their own version of Jeremy Corbyn to be elected in 2020.
There had to be a strong left-wing alternative, and I wasn't seeing that from political parties that existed. So eventually I kind of got fed up and I joined the DSA.
The DSA is the Democratic Socialists of America. It's an organization that wants to completely restructure American society. They gained momentum following Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign in 2016, when he ran on a platform that focused on wealth inequality.
When young people and working people and say loudly and clearly, enough is enough, that our government belongs to all of us, and not just a handful of billionaires. When that happens, we will transform this country.
But while Bernie's brand inspires young voters, it scares those with longer memories.
Abolition of private land ownership.
In America, socialism has long been a synonym for communism.
Communist leaders frequently call themselves socialist as well as communists.
Americans during the Cold War were brought up to fear socialists, with warnings about Reds under the bed.
The enemy is not only to be found at the battlefront, he's just outside the front door, too.
For most Americans, socialism has always been a bit of a taboo. But Bernie Sanders' primary campaign and Donald Trump's election have shaken American politics. And some now believe that the best way to beat President Trump in 2020 is by moving further to the left, with a little bit of grassroots socialism.
How about we just split up all of them?
These are young, energized DSA volunteers, and they're not just looking for votes. To them, socialism means more than that.
I'm with the Democratic Socialists.
Today, it's offering to help tenants fight against eviction.
We're here to talk to you about your rights as a tenant.
While still a small group, the DSA's membership has grown from 6,000 members 2 years ago to 45,000 today. And it's not just because of Bernie.
I think Donald Trump activated all of the socialists that Bernie Sanders created.
The national director of the DSA says that the Democrats need to channel the frustration that propelled Donald Trump into the White House.
Most people in this country are sinking and they don't know where the bottom is. And Trump has constructed an ideology about why that is and a vision, which is unfortunately appealing to a lot of people. But most working people have actually checked out of the system entirely, and that's who we're trying to reach.
And they've already had some success. In a shocking upset, 28-year-old DSA member Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez went from working in a bar just 1 year ago to beating one of the top Democrats in the House.
Nope. I cannot put this into words. All right,
She's seen as the fresh face of the movement that Bernie started, the darling of the Democratic Socialists.
We will not rest until every person in this country is paid a living wage to lead a dignified life.
And she's not the only socialist trying to transform the Democrats.
So I identify as a Democratic Socialist.
Julia Salazar is running for the New York State Senate, and she says that policies such as universal health care and a $15 an hour minimum wage are popular on the doorstep.
For me to be a Democratic Socialist in the U.S. and in a capitalist society means trying to fight for a society in which everyone is taken care of, that the most vulnerable members of our society have full access to health care, have full access to truly affordable housing, Those to me are democratic socialist policies.
I think it's the future of the party.
Yet even centrist Democrats in Congress say a socialist platform won't play well in much of America.
Are you concerned at all that your party is going too far to the left to either win in the midterms or win back the White House?
Well, I think that you can't win the White House without the Midwest, and I don't think that you can go too far to the left and still win the Midwest. Coming from a Midwestern state, I think you need to be able to talk to the industrial Midwest. You need to listen to the people there, and in order to win an election nationwide.
But in Northern Virginia, socialist Lee Carter defeated an established, prominent Republican, even though he was compared to Lenin and Stalin during the campaign.
You know, socialism is evil type thing.
I asked him whether a Trump voter could ever really vote for a socialist.
I know many Trump voters who told me, you know, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump because Bernie is not the nominee. And so there are a lot of people who don't really have an ideological framework that's pushing them towards Donald Trump. It's just this unformed anger at the status quo.
For some in the Democratic Party, this is clearly the future, the embrace of a more radical agenda. But can socialist policies chip away at Donald Trump's appeal to America's industrial heartland? It would be a gamble. The most recent poll shows that only a third of Americans have a positive view of socialism. But perhaps the greater risk is that in fighting over the best way forward, the Democrats forget to unite to tackle their bigger battle, to defeat President Trump.
Well, we're joined now from Washington, D.C. by Dave Weigel, who covers politics for the Washington Post. So the left wing did look like it was in the ascendance for the last few weeks and months, but last night's primaries were a bit of a reality check, weren't they?
Oh, yeah, they found the limits of their popularity in Democratic Party politics. The Socialists did very well. They elected, actually, or they nominated another member of Democratic Socialists of America in Detroit, Rashida Tlaib, who's going to be a congresswoman next year. There's no Republican running. That's 2 from 0 socialists who are going to be in Congress next year. But they were trying to, in the state of Michigan, in the state of Kansas, and in Missouri, in Washington State, trying to elect people in more swing districts or force more primaries with established Democrats. That didn't happen. New York seems to have been, I wouldn't say a fluke, but a very perfect storm that's hard to repeat elsewhere.
And is that good news for the Democrats overall? Because they can't defeat Trump by tacking any further to the left, can they?
Well, it depends how you brand it. There's a lot of Republicans up until 10 p.m. election night 2016 didn't think Trump was going to win. There are ideas that they're running on that are more popular than a lot of ideas, like the border wall is less popular, for example, than Medicare for all. However, yes, the socialist frame, that's not going to be a way the Democrats win this. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's at this point, within a month, but by far the most active spokesperson for this kind of politics, she said today that the strategy is win winnable races where we can't lose the general election, try to expand the framework of debate, the Overton window, and then win more races in 2020. It's a very long-term, if you wanted to be cheeky, you'd call it a Leninist kind of plan to win power over the long term, not just to beat every Democrat in a primary this year.
Right. But I mean, that said, when it comes to the presidential candidate that the Democrats pick, they can't go for another establishment figure after Hillary, can they?
No, there's no one really in the position that Hillary Clinton found herself in 2016. Even Joe Biden, the 2-term vice president, very popular inside the party. When he's polled in the first primary states, he's in the 20s and he's in the 30s. Hillary Clinton began that race with a 60-70% support, which got whittled down, but revealed a enormous surge of support from labor to established Democrats to feminist groups, all for her. It's a bit more divided now, and I would be careful on this, because I think even the more established Democrats who are being taken seriously have made moves to the left on popular policies. Right. For example, Elizabeth Warren, who was a Republican 10 years ago, has only recently become a Democratic politician. She's criticized the criminal justice system. She's criticized drug laws. She's called for raising the minimum wage to $15. She's called for universal health care. Those are policies that were only seen as workable in the Democratic Party because Bernie Sanders did so well, and she is seen as kind of the edge of the mainstream candidates. She's not a fringe person. She's polling very strong in Iowa and New Hampshire.
In a word, who's your pick for the presidential candidate? Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and can either of them defeat Trump?
I don't make a pick. I just cover them. I think that. Again, Trump was badly underrated in 2016, and for some reason he has taken the habit of badly underrating his opposition. This is a president presiding over extremely good economic growth and 4% unemployment who can't break 40% in polls. So the sense here is that Democrats may have a chance in 2020 to nominate somebody far to the left of Hillary Clinton and win. A lot of Democrats think Warren would be better because she does not call herself a socialist. She is basically an angry consumer rights activist who's furious with the same things that Trump voters said they were furious about, whereas Sanders is more of an ideologue, and I feel like that makes him a bit harder to sell.
Okay, that was rather more than a word, but then you are a newspaper journalist, so I'll give you that. Dave Weigelt, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.